Hello and welcome to 7.2 day 2. Today what we're going to do is learn what happens when we combine random variables. Now I have done a lot of these problems just to save us time, but if you wanted to take time and see where I got these numbers, you type in your values up here, 2 and 3 into L1, type these two probabilities into L2 and do one variable stats L1 comma L2, and you'll get the mean and standard deviation. Square this to get your variance. So we have that with x, and then with y, we got these numbers. So there's two different situations, an x situation and a y situation, different probabilities for each. If I wanted to find 3x, so if I multiply each of my x values by 3, but I don't change the probabilities, my new mean is 8.25. My new variance is 1.674. Let's see how those work with how they relate to our random variable x. How do we get from 2.75 to 8.25? Well, I multiply by 3. However, if I take my variance 0.1875, multiplying by 3 doesn't give me 1.678. What I have to do here is I have to multiply by 9. Alright, let's look further. If I did this with my y variable, I multiplied by 5. I got a mean of 26 and 19. If I multiply my mean times 5, I'll get 26. If I multiply my variance, well, what I have to multiply it by here is 25 to get up to 19. So let's see, well, hopefully people see that we're multiplying by the number in front of our random variable to go from one mean to the other, and we multiply by the square to transfer from one variance to the other. Alright. Now, if I do a linear combination like 2 plus 7x, to go from x to my new x, I'm doing 2 plus 7 times my old mean of x. But if with my variance, I'm just multiplying my variance times 49. So it has nothing to do with that 2 in front, just this number squared. So in general, if I have a linear transformation of all the data pieces, what my mean will move by a plus b times the previous mean of x. In my standard deviation or my variance, I have to take b squared times the previous variance. All right, now is where things get a little tricky. So if I have x and I have y, and they're two independent variables, random variables, and if we add them together, we want to find these probabilities. So what's the probability that x happens and y happens and I get a 6? Now for that to occur, the only way I can get a 6 by adding is doing 2 plus 4. Now, what's the probability that this happens and this happens? That would be 0.25 times 0.3, which is 0.075. Now what's the probability we get a 7? Well, to get a 7, we can do 2 plus 5, and we can also do 3 plus 4. Now we need to find each of these probabilities. 2 plus 5, that would be 0.25 times 0.20, which is 0.05. 3 and 4 would be 0.75 times 0.3, which is 0.225. So if I add 0.05 to that, I have a 0.275 chance that I'll get a 7. To get an 8, we can get an 8 by adding 2 and 6, and we can also get an 8 by adding 3 and 5. Now, I shouldn't put an equal sign, but if I want to find each of these probabilities, 2 and 6, 3 and 5. I find my probability of 2 times my probability of 6, so 0.25 times 0.5, that's 0.125. I should say the probability equals. And the probability of getting a 3 and a 5 is 0.75 times 0.2, which is 0.15. So when I add those, that would be 2.275. All right, to get a 9, the only way I can get a 9 is 3 plus 6. So that's 0.75 times 0.5, which is 0.375. So this is my new probability distribution. Now let's find the mean and the standard deviation of that. So I'll go to my list and type in 6, 7, 8, 9 into L1. And my L2, I'll type in 0.075, 0.275, 0.275, and 0.375. Now when I do a one variable stats of L1 and L2, I'll get a mean of 7.95 and a variance of 0.9475, say. Now how do those relate to these numbers down here? Well, the mean is our y and x means added together. My variance is my variances added together. And my standard deviation, I should have written standard deviation here. Our standard deviation was 0.9733. And notice how these two added together is not this. What I have to do to get this is to just square root this value. All right, so in general, to find the means, I take the mean of x plus the mean of y. To get my variance, I take the variance of x plus the variance of y. Now to get my standard deviation of x plus y, I have to take the square root of the variances added together. All right. Now if we do this by subtraction, you take a second and try to do this on your own and see how far you get. All right. Now, hopefully you got these probabilities, and I have a mean here of negative 2.45, and I have a variance of 0.9475. And again, my standard deviation is 0.9734. Notice how these are the same values as before. So I get them by adding my two variances together. Now my mean I get by taking my x mean minus my y mean. So if I look at my general rules, oops, I should have done my general rules. The mean of x minus y is the mean of x minus the mean of y. The variance of x minus y is going to be the variance of x plus the variance of y. And the variance, or the standard deviation of x minus y is the square root of this. And this is where it gets fuzzy for kids. Even when you're subtracting two random variables, you're adding their variances. This is a subtraction and that's an addition. All right. Now this brings us to a really important point, that 3x does not equal x plus x plus x when we are using random variables. 3x is when we just multiply this x value times 3. X times x plus x plus x is when I do an event 3 different times. So take a second and fill the values for the next 3 data pieces, and then we'll compare. All right, I filled in some of the numbers, and you can get this again by doing L1 probabilities, one variable stats, L1 comma L2. Here's the mean, standard deviation, and variance. If I compare that with 3x, I get my mean, standard deviation, and variance here, which this is 3 times previous variance. 2.7 is 3 times 0.9, and to go from 0.81 to 7.29, I need to multiply by 9. Now that's what 3x, that's mean standard deviation and variance for 3x. If I do x plus x plus x, I get a completely different distribution because this is what happens when I do it 3 times. There's many different random numbers for my random variable z, and I can get my mean by taking mean of x plus mean of x plus mean of x, which is 3 times my mean of x. I can get my standard deviation by first dealing with my variance. My variance, I take my variance of x plus my variance of x plus my variance of x, add them up, that's 3 times my variance of x. Now to get my standard deviation, what I have to do is take this thing and square root it. So the square root of 3 times my variance will give me my standard deviation, which is the same thing as square root of 3 times my previous standard deviation. Alright, so these in general are the rules. N times mean works whether I'm doing 3x or x plus x plus x. But the measures of spread are a little bit different. So if it's 3 times x, I just do 3 times my standard deviation. But if I'm adding up, doing something 3 different times, it's the square root of 3 times my previous standard deviation. For our variance, if I'm just doing 3x, I take 3 squared, which is 9 times my previous variance. And if I'm doing 3 separate random events, then it would be 3 times my previous variance. All right. Now, this is where I stopped in the lesson, so I'll stop this and start it up on the next day.